Hey guys, today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. It is often said that great wealth comes with equally significant problems, many of which people may not even anticipate. Wealth can attract secret adversaries, envious onlookers, ill-wishers, and even individuals who pretend to be friends in hopes of claiming their share. However, the most dangerous and deceptive threat often comes from someone close, someone least expected to bring harm. In the fall of 2003, the brutal crime that took the life of successful entrepreneur Jenny Ballard shocked the quiet, close-knit town of Little Rock, Arkansas. The wealthy and well-respected 58-year-old woman was found lifeless in her own home, and the circumstances of the crime left the community in disbelief and horror. Jenny had been viciously attacked, and the perpetrator appeared to have deeply personal motives. Initially, however, no one could imagine who could be capable of such a cruel act. Jenny Lillian Ballard, née Connor, was born on August 11, 1945, in the small town of Bald Knob in White County, Arkansas. She was the youngest of 3 children in the family of Raynard and Barbara Connor. Jenny grew up alongside her 2 older brothers, Neil and Daniel. The Connor family was modest but well-regarded, with parents who worked hard to ensure their children had access to a good education and opportunities to achieve their potential. Jenny was independent from a young age, ambitious, and determined to carve out a successful life for herself. Despite her drive and resolve, she was known for being kind-hearted, approachable, and friendly. Jenny received an excellent education, first attending a prestigious college and later enrolling in a state university. A few years after graduating, she met a man named Lester Kenneth Ballard, who was 11 years her senior. Despite their age difference, the two developed a strong romantic connection and officially tied the knot in 1973. 2 years later, the couple welcomed their first child, a son named Brian. 4 years after that, their family grew again with the birth of their daughter, Leslie. The Ballard family was often described as successful and happy. Jenny and Lester shared a deep affection for one another, raised their 2 children together, and built a thriving business, a printing company called Ballard's Printing Inc. They later relocated to the serene town of Little Rock, where they also launched an engineering and architectural firm. The Ballards were one of the most prominent and respected families in town, successful, wealthy, and seemingly untouched by hardship. However, in 1994, their oldest son, Brian, then a student at a prestigious university, was diagnosed with an aggressive form of cancer. Despite the best treatments at leading clinics, Brian passed away a year later. At the time, Leslie, the younger of the Ballards' 2 children, was still in school. Her brother's death devastated her and left the family grappling with immense grief. Jenny and Lester channeled all their love and attention into their daughter, doting on her and trying to shield her from further pain. Leslie excelled in school, was well-behaved, and never caused any trouble. Though she was very close to her mother, many saw her as her father's little girl. After high school, Leslie chose to study printing technology and editing, aiming to contribute to the family business and eventually take it over. Her parents were overjoyed. Not only was their only remaining child taking an interest in the enterprise they had built, but she also showed a real aptitude for the work, with a clear vision for its future. Leslie graduated from college and began working at her parents' company in a leadership role. Those who knew her described her as intelligent, responsible, and driven. Neighbors admired the close, loving relationship she had with her parents, often remarking on how inseparable she and Jenny seemed. But by the early 2000s, things began to take a drastic turn. Leslie started dating a young man whom her parents disapproved of, and despite their objections, she married him. Relations between the Ballards and their new son-in-law were strained from the start, and Leslie gradually distanced herself from her parents. The estrangement became so severe that Leslie didn't attend her father's funeral when he passed away unexpectedly from a heart attack in August 2003 at the age of 69. It later emerged that Jenny hadn't informed her daughter about Lester's death. No one could understand the sudden breakdown in the once close bond between mother and daughter. The two, who had once been inseparable, now seemed like strangers. Law enforcement quickly responded to the scene at the Ballard residence, dispatching multiple patrol units to investigate. What they discovered inside the home stunned even the most seasoned investigators. The living room was a gruesome sight, with blood spattered across the floor, walls, furniture, curtains, and even the ceiling. Jenny's body showed clear signs of an extremely violent attack. Someone had repeatedly stabbed her with a large knife, continuing the assault even after she had succumbed to her injuries. The house appeared to have been left in slight disarray. A jewelry box had been broken into, with several valuable items missing, and a small amount of cash had disappeared from a damaged safe. At first glance, it looked like a burglary gone wrong, possibly a confrontation between the homeowner and an intruder who had been caught in the act. Closer examination, however, told a much darker story. Defensive wounds on Jenny's hands suggested she had fought desperately for her life, though the struggle was hopelessly one-sided. The official cause of death was determined to be severe blood loss resulting from numerous stab wounds, over 70 in total. The most horrifying detail, however, was the deep cut across her throat, inflicted with devastating precision. From the outset, experienced investigators doubted the burglary narrative. The damage to the safe seemed staged, as though someone had deliberately tried to make it appear as if forced open, despite the fact that the person who accessed it evidently knew the combination. Furthermore, the ferocity of the attack clearly indicated a personal motive. This wasn't a random act of aggression, it was deliberate, brutal, and deeply emotional. The assailant hadn't simply committed a crime, they had carried it out with chilling rage, leaving no chance for Jenny to escape. The body was discovered by a man who identified himself as a close friend of the victim. This man was Mickey Holloway, a seasoned detective who had spent years working in the homicide division of the Little Rock Police Department. As is standard protocol, investigators first questioned and scrutinized the individual who reported the crime and was present at the scene. Given Mickey Holloway's extensive background investigating serious crimes, investigators were well aware that he would know how to cover his tracks and deflect suspicion. This raised questions about the true nature of his relationship with Jenny Ballard. While Holloway referred to her as a close friend, evidence suggested their connection might have been deeper. Mickey had a spare set of keys to Jenny's home, and several personal items of his, including a toothbrush and razor, were found inside, indicating he may have spent nights there. Mickey soon admitted that he and Jenny were more than just friends. They were in frequent contact, and when he was unable to reach her all day on September 12th, his concern grew. By morning, he decided to visit her home to make sure she was okay. He entered through the garage door, where he noticed a key still in the lock. The working theory at the time was that Jenny had returned home, unlocked the door, and left the key in place before hearing a noise inside. Rushing in to investigate, she may have confronted an intruder. A struggle ensued, and the situation escalated to a deadly conclusion. However, inconsistencies in this scenario raised doubts. Only a small portion of the valuables in the house had been taken. High-end designer jewelry and cash were left out in the open, untouched, while drawers had been ransacked as if someone were searching for something specific. The safe, though damaged, had not been completely emptied, further suggesting the intruder wasn't looking for money. Holloway was brought to the police station for questioning. He appeared distraught and grief-stricken, but fully cooperated with the investigation. Mickey provided a detailed account of what he knew and offered an alibi for the time of the crime. After verifying his statements, investigators cleared him as a suspect and released him. Although Mickey was not involved in the crime, he provided valuable insight, suggesting that Jenny's daughter and son-in-law be investigated further. Meanwhile, 2 of Jenny's neighbors came forward with accounts of seeing her on September 12th. One neighbor, a friend who lived across the street, reported that Jenny had returned home around noon. Detectives needed to locate Jenny's daughter, Leslie, both to inform her of her mother's passing and to question her and her husband, Michael, regarding any knowledge they might have about the case. It didn't take long to find their home address, but the McCools were not there, and no one seemed to know where they had gone. Neighbors had mixed opinions about the couple, describing them as rude and arrogant, behavior that sharply contrasted with how Leslie's family and friends had always described her. This prompted investigators to delve deeper into Leslie and Michael's background. They learned that Leslie had always been a dutiful, well-mannered young woman who excelled in school and followed her parents' guidance. She grew into a beautiful woman but was often described as shy and lacking confidence. In 2001, at the age of 22, Leslie began attending a local gym where she met Michael McCool, a fitness instructor. Michael quickly noticed the attractive young woman and offered his services as a personal trainer, to which Leslie agreed. The two soon developed a romantic relationship and began dating. Early on, however, Michael misled Leslie about his age, claiming to be only 13 years older than her when in reality the age gap was 23 years. Michael came from a wealthy family and had been indulged from a young age. He was described as brash, spoiled, and unpredictable. Over the years, he frequently found himself in trouble, but his parents consistently intervened, helping him avoid consequences. This upbringing instilled in him a sense of impunity. At 18, while intoxicated, Michael got into a physical altercation with a friend, striking him several times in the head. The victim lost consciousness and later passed away from his injuries. Michael was charged with aggravated assault resulting in death, and he faced significant jail time. However, his father used his influence to keep Michael out of prison, arranging instead for him to enlist in the Marine Corps under a contract. After serving 5 years, Michael returned to Little Rock. He married and had 2 children, but the marriage quickly fell apart. Michael's relationships rarely lasted due to his volatile temperament, controlling behavior, and frequent outbursts. Former partners later accused him of cruelty and both emotional and physical mistreatment. Michael's fit appearance and charm helped him land a job as a personal trainer at a well-known gym, where he quickly built a client base. His position also made it easy for him to meet women, often leading to short-lived flings. For Leslie, Michael was her first serious love, and she was completely infatuated with him. Realizing this, Michael began to manipulate her, treating her like his possession. He insisted that Leslie dye her hair blonde, undergo breast augmentation, wear more revealing and provocative clothing, and apply bold makeup at all times. Leslie's parents noticed the changes in their daughter and were deeply concerned. They strongly disapproved of her relationship with Michael McCool and urged her to break it off. However, Leslie not only refused to leave Michael, but secretly married him just a few months after they began dating. This decision caused a major rift between Leslie and her parents, and she all but ceased communication with them, although she continued working at the family business. Jenny and Lester Ballard made it clear to everyone that they did not support their daughter's choice and did not consider Michael a part of their family. They believed he was manipulating Leslie and was only interested in their money and the family business. The Ballards even revised their will, adding conditions that required Leslie to divorce Michael and sever all ties with him before she could inherit anything. When Leslie discovered the changes to the will, she had another heated argument with her parents, declaring that she would never leave her husband because she loved him. Her absence at Lester's funeral after his sudden passing raised eyebrows. While many were aware of the tension within the family, it seemed incomprehensible that Leslie would fail to pay her respects to her father. On September 15th, 2 days after Jenny's body was discovered, police returned to Leslie's home. This time, she and Michael were there. They arrived in a car that had been a gift from her parents and seemed genuinely surprised by the officer's visit. When the couple was informed of Jenny's death, Leslie had an emotional outburst. She screamed, cried, and appeared on the verge of fainting. However, seasoned detectives noted that her reaction seemed overly dramatic, almost rehearsed. Leslie quickly regained her composure and agreed to accompany the officers to the station for questioning. Once there, her demeanor shifted entirely. She now appeared calm and detached. She told investigators that she and her husband had been out of town for the past 4 days, visiting Michael's parents in Hot Springs near Lake Hamilton in Garland County, Arkansas. Leslie claimed she had never been in serious conflict with her parents, saying that while her parents initially disapproved of Michael, they eventually accepted her decision to marry him. When asked about the revised will, which excluded both her and Michael from any claim to the family business or estate, she hesitated before responding. She stated that it didn't matter much because she and her husband were financially stable and capable of providing for themselves. When the topic shifted to her father's death, Leslie's tone grew somber. She explained that she had missed the funeral simply because she didn't know about it, suggesting that her mother had chosen not to inform her. Leslie then directed investigators' attention to her mother's new companion, hinting that he had suspiciously stepped into Jenny's life soon after Lester's passing. According to Leslie, she only learned about her father's passing in mid-August, after he had already been buried. Shocked and hurt, she immediately went to her family home to confront her mother about why she hadn't been informed. When Leslie arrived, she was startled to find Mickey Holloway sitting in her father's chair, wearing a robe and holding a mug of tea. His belongings were scattered throughout the house, while her mother had seemingly discarded her father's possessions. Leslie grew suspicious of her mother's new partner, believing he had ulterior motives and might even have been involved in Jenny's death. Unaware that Holloway had already been ruled out as a suspect, Leslie tried to shift the blame onto him. However, detectives felt that she wasn't being entirely truthful and suspected she was hiding something. Leslie and Michael were interviewed separately in different interrogation rooms. Initially, their stories aligned. Michael, with his criminal history and apparent interest in benefiting from the Ballards' wealth, quickly became the prime suspect. In contrast, Leslie was described by family and neighbors as a compliant, soft-spoken woman who had always followed her parents' guidance. During his questioning, Michael appeared calm and confident. With no direct evidence against him, detectives decided to release him, suggesting he wait for Leslie in the corridor or his car. He chose to remain at the station, expecting Leslie to be released shortly as well. However, Leslie grew increasingly anxious during her interrogation. She contradicted herself, stumbled over details, and became visibly distraught. Around 2 a.m., after 6 hours of questioning, detectives pointed out yet another inconsistency in her story. Leslie took a deep breath and said she was ready to confess. Everyone assumed she would implicate Michael in the crime. Instead, Leslie shocked the room by saying, "I killed my mom." At first, investigators were skeptical, thinking she might be trying to protect her husband. But as Leslie recounted the events in detail, her story stunned everyone in the room. It all started when Leslie met Michael. Her parents were horrified by her choice and refused to accept him into their family. Hoping time would heal the rift, Leslie distanced herself from her parents, expecting reconciliation eventually. However, her parents became increasingly alarmed by the dramatic changes in her appearance and behavior, realizing Michael was manipulating her. Convinced he was only after their money and business, the Ballards rewrote their will, cutting Leslie and Michael out entirely unless the couple divorced. When her parents told Leslie about the revised will, she was devastated. Feeling betrayed, she cut off contact, no longer visiting or calling. In August 2003, when Lester passed away suddenly, Jenny chose not to tell her daughter, aiming to punish her for her defiance. The decision deeply hurt Leslie. To make matters worse, Leslie later discovered that just 2 weeks after her father's death, her mother had begun seeing someone new. This ignited an intense resentment toward Jenny. Still, despite her anger, Leslie claimed she had no intention of harming her mother. She insisted that the thought of committing such an act had never crossed her mind. Michael, still determined to gain control of the Ballards' wealth and business, discovered a legal loophole. If both of Leslie's parents passed away within a month of each other, Leslie would inherit everything, regardless of the revised will. With only a few days left in this critical time frame, Michael began pressuring Leslie to act, threatening dire consequences if she refused. He warned her that if she didn't eliminate Jenny, he would do it himself, and then turn his wrath on her. Michael meticulously planned the crime, including the use of a face-covering mask to conceal the attacker's identity while leaving the scene unnoticed. He also devised the fake robbery to make the crime appear plausible, reasoning that a break-in at the wealthy Ballard home would seem entirely believable. On the day of the crime, Leslie dressed entirely in black, put on gloves and a mask, and took a large knife provided by Michael. She drove to her mother's house and waited in the garage for Jenny to return. When Jenny arrived and unlocked the door, Leslie ambushed her, shoving her into the house before she could even remove the key from the lock. The struggle moved into the living room, where Leslie stabbed Jenny multiple times in the back. When her mother fell to the floor, Leslie continued to strike her with the knife, driven by fear and the pressure she felt from Michael. Jenny likely never saw her attacker's face under the mask. After the attack, Leslie ransacked the house to stage the scene as a robbery. She took a few valuable pieces of jewelry and her father's coin collection, which was worth a significant sum. Her primary goal, however, was to locate and steal the will. Once she had what she needed, she damaged the safe to make the crime appear more convincing and fled the scene in her mother's car. She later abandoned the vehicle in a parking lot at the city's edge, where Michael picked her up in his own car. While Leslie was confessing, Michael waited in the corridor, seemingly relaxed. When he was called back in for further questioning, he remained composed until detectives informed him that Leslie had admitted everything. At that point, Michael denied any involvement, claiming he was entirely unaware of Leslie's intentions to harm her mother. Michael insisted that Leslie had orchestrated and executed the crime on her own. He admitted only to helping her cover it up afterward, including hiding evidence. He told investigators where they could find the blood-stained clothing and revealed that the stolen jewelry and coin collection had been taken to his parents' house in Hot Springs. Police escorted both suspects to Michael's parents' house in Hot Springs to recover the evidence. During the drive, Leslie and Michael acted disturbingly casual. They joked with each other and appeared completely unfazed by the situation, showing no remorse for what had transpired. The Ballards' coins and jewelry were discovered in a hidden compartment in one of the rooms of Michael's parents' house. When detectives asked Leslie about the weapon used in the crime, she shrugged and claimed that Michael had taken it. She suggested he might have disposed of it at Lake Hamilton. Experienced divers were immediately called to the scene. Michael smirked, dismissing their efforts as a waste of time. However, his confidence quickly faded when just 10 minutes later, a diver emerged holding a large knife. Forensic analysis later confirmed it to be the weapon used in the crime. As previously noted, the autopsy revealed over 70 stab wounds on Jenny's body. While Michael may have orchestrated the crime, no one could have forced Leslie to inflict so many wounds. This level of violence suggested that Leslie had acted out of deep anger, venting her fury on her mother in a moment of unrestrained rage. Both Leslie and Michael maintained their innocence, attempting to paint themselves as victims. Leslie claimed that Michael had coerced her into committing the crime by threatening her life. She argued that fear for her safety had driven her to follow his plan. Michael, on the other hand, insisted that he had no knowledge of Leslie's intentions and had never believed she was capable of harming her own mother. He admitted only to assisting in concealing evidence. Leslie's trial began in the spring of 2004. She was charged with committing the crime and tampering with evidence. Her defense team emphasized her clean record and the positive character references provided by those who knew her. Despite these efforts, the jury found her guilty on all counts. Leslie was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Michael's trial began in June of the same year. His lawyers argued that he had no prior knowledge of Leslie's plans and had not participated in the act itself. However, the jury convicted him of being an accomplice to the crime and attempting to destroy evidence. Michael was sentenced to 40 years for his role in the crime and an additional 20 years for tampering with evidence, totaling 60 years without parole, a de facto life sentence. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.